One of the world's busiest seaports, the Port of Los Angeles, says the container backlog is easing, with container processing jumping more than 7% in February from a year ago. That was helped by a slowdown in shipments from China during the Lunar New Year period, but inventory replenishing is expected to increase the load again. For more, let's bring in Jean Seroka, Executive Director at the Port of Los Angeles, who joins us from LA. Jean, always good to catch up with you. So you moved record volume in February. Is March shaping up to be the same?
Good morning, Sri. It is. It looks like from all estimates right now, quarter one will be our best forced quarter in history.
Having said that, Jean, operationally, is congestion going to come back given Russia and China are the new threats once again to the global supply chain?
Well, we're battling through an uneven supply chain across the spectrum. We don't think it's going to come back to the levels that we witnessed thanks to some preparation that we've made on the ground. And we've got to hit the mark on three areas. One was an early Lunar New Year, and it looks like we've managed that flow of cargo or mini surge fairly well. Second is Q2, which is traditionally our slack season. The retailers will use that for inventory replenishment, and we've got a beat on that situation now. If we hit the mark on both of those, we'll pivot to an earlier than normal peak season in pretty good form. With respect to the atrocities that are happening in the Ukraine, less than 2% of the Port of Los Angeles business today is trade with Russia. Infinitesimal amount of cargo and no impact to speak of with the sanctions that have been placed on that country. We are watching two other areas. One are the distribution of farm products as well as energy products. And then second, the cyber threatscape. We have the United States only cybersecurity operations center here in Los Angeles that was stood up back in 2014. And today we're stopping 40 million cyber intrusion attempts a month. That's double what it was pre-COVID-19. We're watching on all fronts today.
That's a staggering number, 40 million. Why is the Port of LA being targeted? Are we talking about critical infrastructure here?
Critical infrastructure, soft target, people working from home, looking for softness in the technology spectrum, and folks with a lot of time on their hands that have been trying to find a way to get easy money or easy satisfaction, none of which are working today. We've upped the ante on our security systems, the ability for folks to get in, and the detection rates that we've got right now by our ISO 27001 trained staff is the best in the business.
Jean, circle back to China if we can. Major ports are shut down over there because of the COVID-19 measures and zero tolerance. What's going to be the knock-on effect for the Port of LA? And is that going to disrupt that inventory replenishing period that you referred to in the second quarter?
With China's zero tolerance policy on COVID-19, we will see a short-term lull if there are shutdowns, and then a pretty quick rebound to catch up on purchase orders. Now, ships can move from port to port. We can move cargo from terminal to terminal if that happens, but we can't move factories. So we're watching very closely with our contacts on the ground in China, as well as following energy usage, traffic patterns, and even pollution on the ground to see what level of factory production is taking place in addition to those great contacts we have in country. Again, these shutdowns should be minimal, but we're watching very closely. And as always, there's something happening every day in the supply chain that impacts us. We've got to be resilient and pivot very quickly.
Jean, your workers, the men and women, have been performing a superhuman task throughout the pandemic and beyond. Contract expiration is approaching for unionized workers in the West Coast ports. There is a lot at stake on both sides. Will these negotiations lead to a deal, or if unions and management don't agree, are we looking at labor unrest?
Yeah, I don't speak for either side, but both will have seasoned negotiators at the table for a contract that expires on June 30th, Sri. Typically, these negotiations go beyond contract expiry, but from the rank and file to the international officers, it's full steam ahead on the work. Both sides, the Employers Association and the dock workers, understand what's at stake economically and how important these workers are to the U.S. economy. For the 29 ports covered in this bargaining agreement across the west coast of the United States, they account for about 12% of our nation's GDP. I know that the Biden administration will be watching these negotiations very closely while allowing for fair bargaining to take place with these experts. We're going to continue to keep bringing both sides together, but I trust, based on conversations with leaders from both sides of the table, that they're going to get to work here pretty quickly, beginning in the month of May, on these negotiations.
Gene, automation, you've been expanding automation at the Port of LA, and I'm sure your colleagues have been doing the same across the United States. But that has been a traditional point of contention in terms of the discussions between unions and management. How do you think they are threading that needle?
This is one of the more polarizing topics of conversation, as you know, Sri, in our industry. The technology supplement has been in the West Coast contract now since year 2008. And as we move forward, we have said very clearly here under the mayor of Los Angeles, Eric Garcetti, and myself at the port, that we cannot leave the workers behind. The technology will continue to advance, and that's why, working with California Governor Gavin Newsom, he has outlined in his proposed budget a spot and line item for a new workforce and goods movement training center here at the Port of Los Angeles. We're going to play an outsized role in making sure we have the facilities and the capability on the ground to help upskill and reskill workers, take in the young individual who wants to join our industry, and even for folks that want to change careers in midstream. They'll have a place to go where training is at a premium. We'll continue to bring the Employers Association along and others to invest in this facility, but it'll be 20 acres on the ground at the north end of the Port of Los Angeles, and subject to our own board's approval, we'll put $40 million of cash of our own into this investment. Now, there's a lot more that will go into it than just the training center. Private sector has to go along at a faster pace as well. But this will be an important part, not only of these negotiations, but the culture we develop going forward to help the worker move forward, upward, and into this industry.
Gene, it appears that upskilling is going to be a big component of that conversation. We've got to leave it there, sir. Thank you very much indeed, as always. Gene Seroka, the Executive Director at the Port of Los Angeles.